Welcome to Savidge Kitchen. Today we are going to be making our own hazelnut liqueur. Now, I love me some Frangelico. This is an Italian liqueur that is absolutely delicious. It is hazelnut flavored, obviously. It also has notes of coffee, of caramel, of vanilla, chocolates even. It is the perfect after dinner drink. It's wonderful in cocktails. It's wonderful over ice cream, little shot in your coffee. Oh, I mean, honestly, I hate to mess with perfection, but we love to DIY things around here. And also, it might be hard for you to find this where you are in the world, and it's very easy to make our own. Now, Frangelico as a brand is relatively young in the world of spirits. They didn't come around until, I believe it was 1978. The recipe, though, the hazelnut goodness that's in here has been around since the 1800s. There were these Christian monks that lived in the Piedmont region of Italy where hazelnuts grow wild. And one in particular, and I'm probably gonna butcher this pronunciation, Italians forgive me, but I believe it was Fra Angelico or Friar Angelico. He developed this recipe. He was sort of a recluse and really liked his nips, as it were. I feel like I could relate to this man. So the design of this bottle is a nod to him. You see like the little monk with his little belt. It's adorable. The way this is made for mass production, they actually are very transparent on their website. They crush hazelnuts. There's a distillate that comes from that. Then they add different flavorings of coffee, caramel, vanilla, chocolate, and then that gets added with sugar and alcohol, and voila, you get Frangelico. Since we're not into home distilling quite yet, and I'm not patient at all, we're gonna do a quicker, easier process that's gonna get us very, very close to this. Okay, before anything else, time for a little bit of self-care. I've gotten in the habit of taking this ZBiotics pre-alcohol anytime I know I'm gonna be drinking. So like right now when I'm filming, out to dinner with friends, having a glass of wine, a particularly rough Tuesday, this has become my little self-care ritual. ZBiotics pre-alcohol is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. And what that means is that the scientists who developed this understand what happens in the body when we drink. Alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct called acetaldehyde. Now, acetaldehyde is what makes us feel terrible the next morning, not dehydration. This ZBiotics pre-alcohol produces an enzyme that attacks the acetaldehyde, so the next morning you can just like live life as normal instead of regretting everything you did the night before. For the most part, it's not a magic bullet. Honestly, kind of tastes good too. Like, I'm not mad at it. Now, if you saw my video a couple weeks ago with the peanut butter whiskey, you know that I've partnered with ZBiotics, which means that you get a 15% discount if you either hit the QR code on the screen here or click on the link in the description. So I know that this is a channel about food and drink and all things indulgent and delicious, but that means that we have to take extra good care of ourselves. So get yourself some ZBiotics. All right, let's talk about things that we are going to need to accomplish this recipe. We're going to be working with two base spirits. I have vodka and I have brandy. But if you want to do just vodka, you can. If you want to do just brandy, you can. Just be aware it's going to change your final flavor. Sugar. I'm using plain white sugar. You could use a organic cane sugar here. That's the slightly less processed, like a turbinado sugar. I don't think I would use brown sugar. I think brown sugar would be overpowering. That molasses flavor would be like a little too much for this. So I would either go with like an organic cane sugar or plain white sugar. Then get yourself some hazelnuts. Coffee. I am going to be using some whole coffee beans. If you want to cheat and just use like a couple ounces of brewed coffee, that's okay. Or if you want to use some instant espresso powder, that also is okay. And then my secret weapon, cocoa nibs. Now, if you are unfamiliar, chocolate is made from cocoa beans. Cocoa beans are the fruit of a plant and they are ground up, made into chocolate. And cocoa nibs are just leftover remnants, crushed beans from that process. Oh, and they smell delightful. They are chocolatey, but they are not chocolate. There is no sugar added to this. There is no dairy added to this. This is literally just like leftover crushed beans, and they are edible. They're kind of nutty. They're a touch bitter. Some people like to use these instead of coffee beans to do a brewed coffee this way. I'm a big fan. And then for tools that you're going to need, obviously, a container that we're going to end in. I love these 1,000 milliliter bottles. I have links to Amazon lists below, but I will specifically put a link to these bottles in the description too. Heavy bottomed pan because we are going to be making a syrup. Funnel, spatula, spoon, you know, cookie things, measuring cups. And then, depending on how serious you are about your nuts, you might need a nutcracker. So in front of me, I have two different objects. Both of them are hazelnuts. These are hazelnuts that have already been shelled, roasted, and the skins removed. These are hazelnuts straight from the tree. They are in a hard shell. They're the same thing. Either will work fine in this recipe. One just requires more prep than the other. Me, as we know, I like to do things fast. So I buy the pre-roasted, shelled, peeled hazelnuts. If you are getting the hazelnuts in the shell, you're gonna need to crack them. You can do this with a mallet. You can do this with a nutcracker. Ooh, helps if you put it in that way. It's a little messy. We don't mind a little mess. And then out of it, you get this nut. This is edible as is, but we need to toast it, and we do want to remove this skin. If we make our syrup with this skin, it changes the flavor dramatically. Trust me, I've tried. I have here about 2/3 of a cup or so of hazelnuts. Now these hazelnuts came to me already toasted and peeled, but they're not toasted quite enough. And we also want to break them up. So we're gonna cut them up before toasting, and this is just gonna bring out some more of that flavor. And you can also see here too, like they weren't exactly like super precise about removing the skins, and that's fine. It's not a big deal. Like if you are doing this at home and you are shelling and peeling your own hazelnuts, it's okay if there's little bits of skin left on. You just don't want to have hazelnuts that have all of the skin left on, because it makes for a very, very bitter liquid. And it's just like not the right, it's dark in color and it just doesn't work, trust. All right, so into our dry pan, I'm not putting any liquid in this yet, go our hazelnuts. Now we just want to give this like, I don't know, 5 to 7 minutes or so over a medium-high heat. We don't want to burn the hazelnuts. We really just want to warm them up and start to toast them a little bit more. You're gonna start to smell it. Use your nose, you'll know it's ready. Now, if you are starting with raw hazelnuts, you're going to have to blanch them first to remove the skins, and that is okay. Blanch them, remove the skins, wait until they're totally dry again to dry toast them for the next step. I'm putting cold water now into a hot pot. This is gonna bubble and steam, so just be careful if you're doing this at home, or start with hot water. So we're gonna wanna let this simmer for a good 10 minutes. And what we're doing right now is the water and the heat is extracting so much flavor from our hazelnuts. The more conventional way to do this would be to rest hazelnuts in alcohol and let the alcohol do the extraction. It just takes a lot of time. And also, I feel like you have a little bit less control over the process. There is nothing wrong with doing it that way. There's a lot of recipes out there that have different methods for doing it. Have at it, truly. This method, we're controlling our flavor and our time by doing everything before we add alcohol to the mix. So a little bit of trivia for you while we wait for this to cook down. The hazelnuts that are used in Frangelico are from the Piedmont region of Italy. The hazelnuts there have a slightly different flavor than the hazelnuts that most of us get in the US. Now in the US, hazelnuts are grown predominantly in Oregon, like something like 90% of the US's hazelnut supply comes from like one particular spot in Oregon. Oregon. As far as the rest of the world is concerned, most of the world supply of hazelnuts actually comes from Turkey. So there are going to be slight flavor variations between all these different hazelnuts. And I could be wrong here. I've done a lot of reading over the past couple of weeks on this, but I'm pretty sure hazelnuts originally, like from the beginning, originated in Asia. There really should be like a food trivia game. There probably is. So now to this mixture, we are going to add our sugar, and I want to bring this to a boil and make sure all of the sugar is dissolved. And you'll notice our ratio here is a little bit different. I don't have a 1-to-1 simple syrup. I have a little bit more water than sugar. And that is because I want the final result to texture-wise be closer to Frangelico. However, if you want it sweeter, add more sugar. Like, the fun in making our own is that we can adjust to our own particular tastes. For me, to get it as close to this, I want a 1.5 to 1 ratio of water to sugar. I can tell that all the sugar is dissolved, our liquid is looking clear. I'm turning the heat completely off, and I'm adding our cocoa nibs and a few whole coffee beans. I have about a tablespoon or so of cocoa nibs, and I think we're 5 coffee beans. Into the mixture, give it a stir just to make sure everything is coated. Now we're gonna remove this from the heat and let it sit. The key here is leave it alone. Let the natural cooling of the syrup pull out every last bit of flavor from the nuts, from the cocoa nibs, from the coffee beans. If you have time to let this sit in the refrigerator overnight, that flavor will intensify. I've done this quite a few times now. After about 3 hours or so, you're good. But 12 hours overnight or 24 hours, even better. Beyond that, it really doesn't matter. Honestly, just like overnight in the fridge is quite enough. But if you need something in a hurry, just give it a few hours to get completely cool. What I have here is a batch of syrup that I made earlier today. One of the questions I get asked most often in the comments is like, why would you do this? It's not that cost effective. Well, depending on where you are in the world, it could be, it is in a lot of places. But 2, I just like doing it. And 3, we're not gonna let anything go to waste here. We're ending up with these deliciously candied hazelnuts that I like to turn into little chocolate bites. And if you're interested in that recipe, let me know. Maybe I'll do a video on that. So first thing we're gonna do is strain our syrup. There we go. Like seriously, like you wanna keep this. Save these, we're gonna melt some chocolate, pour them into like little cups, top them with some flaky sea salt, and they're so delicious. You can see this syrup has a lot of stuff in it because we went through, this is a fine mesh strainer, but there's still a lot of room for things to get through. We're gonna go through another level of straining. I'm using a tea strainer. This is a finer mesh. You could also use cheesecloth. Cheesecloth is very effective, probably more effective than this. It doesn't have to be clear. It's totally fine. But if it's gonna bother you, just keep straining it. This is gonna be more syrup than we need for this recipe. And the nice thing about these DIY liqueurs, it's all ratios, right? I'm gonna put the exact measurements for the bottle that we're going into in the description below, but keep in mind, you can scale up or scale down. Okay, this is a lot, but you know, I may or may not be experimenting with a Savidge Kitchen hazelnut syrup. Shh. Let's taste this, shall we? Oh my God. That is so good. All right, this is where it turns into that scene from Die Hard 3 where all the things start mixing together. We're gonna take our vodka, our brandy, and our syrup and fill her up. I like to do equal parts vodka to equal parts brandy, and then we're gonna do a touch more syrup. If you want something to be more sweet, add more syrup. If you want it to be less sweet, I would add less syrup and maybe up the brandy factor. I'd settle down with the vodka. The brandy is adding a lot of warmth and complexity here. You can drink this right away. If you wait a day or two, those flavors are really gonna commit to each other and it is delicious. But it's delicious now too, so let's do a tasting. Pretty excited. Let's start with our Frangelico. Oh, so good. Very smooth, very delicious. As far as spirits go, this is a pretty low ABV, which is one of the reasons that we diluted it with so much water in our syrup. This is only 20% alcohol by volume, 40 proof. Not that that's not a lot of alcohol, just in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much. But very smooth, hazelnutty, chocolatey. Okay, let's taste our DIY version. And to smell it, well, right now, because it's fresh, I'm smelling the ethanol, the alcohol a little bit more. Oh, that is delicious. Tasting them side by side, I almost think I get less hazelnut out of the Fra Angelico and maybe just a touch more chocolate, where I get a little bit more hazelnut out of this version, but the chocolate is still there. The coffee is really subtle. It's really good though. I would say the sweetness level and the mouthfeel are just about identical. So if you want something that is more sweet, add a little more sugar to your syrup. If you want something that is less sweet, I would add less syrup overall and more brandy. Also, some alternatives, right? So if you aren't gonna buy cocoa nibs and if you don't have whole coffee beans lying around, it is okay. I would, instead of whole coffee beans, add like 1.5 ounces, 45 ml of freshly brewed coffee. The cocoa nibs are a little different. I would not melt chocolate and put it into this because you're gonna end up with like a little bit of sludge. You could do a chocolate fat wash. You could do cocoa powder and then filter it out. I would almost say I would skip it in and find like a really chocolatey coffee if you're not gonna do cocoa nibs. Or just skip everything and only do the hazelnuts. That alone makes for a delicious liqueur. The only thing that we did not add to this is vanilla extract. They do add vanilla extract to this. I just, in coming up with the syrup for this, I didn't think that the vanilla actually added much of anything. There's so many other flavors going on that are vanilla adjacent. So when we added vanilla, it just felt like it took over a little bit. But if you try it, let me know. Let me know if you have a different experience with that. I want to say again, thank you to our sponsor for this video, ZBiotics. If you're going to be drinking, out partying, get yourself some pre-alcohol, have that first. Yeah, love this. So let me know what you guys want to see next in the comments. Cheers, friends.